So you think evolution is when monkey gives birth to human?
No, I'm just asking the question
Why are you asking the question?
because I'm just asking. You said that evolution is true and it's based off of this and that. If it's over thousands or millions of years, I'm just asking. We still have monkeys. Have you ever seen them since they're our closest ancestor? You seen
So
any of
when
them?
I asked you, do you think that the way evolution works is monkeys give birth to humans, and you said no, the answer was actually yes, wasn't it? Because that's just what you said you think evolution is.
I just jumped in here, buddy. I'm trying to figure out what you got going on.
And I'm trying to figure out what you think, which is why I asked you that question.
Jesus Christ. Let's see. You say everything's blocking up here. It says scientific theories actuate, describe the world, are based on evidence. The Big Bang Theory happened. Magic is
Accurate.
real. Yep, believe all that. Earth is billions of
Okay.
years old. Yep. Earth isn't flat. Cool. I'm good with that. Um, Scientific theories. Evolution is true. That's what I had a
Yes.
problem with. Okay. So
Why?
what do you base everything off of? Evolution is true.
Evidence.
Okay. Like.
Like the fossil record, genetics, all of those things almost perfectly match what you would expect. So, like in science, we come up with ideas, hypotheses, and then we go out and we look for evidence that uh, look to see if there is any supporting evidence, and that's exactly what the fossil record, comparative anatomy, genetics, developmental biology, and all of
Okay.
those
What are
things
we closest?
tell us.
What are we closest genetically to? A
That's
monkey.
still alive, chimpanzees, but we didn't come from chimpanzees.
Okay, I'm just saying we're so close, but why hasn't a chimpanzee evolved yet? This is my
They
question to you.
they have evolved. That's how they got here. Every single organism that's alive evolved from
Yeah,
some
we all
other
get
population
out
in
of
the
the ocean.
past.
We
Well,
got
at one point, yeah, but chimpanzees didn't come from the ocean. They're the descendants of creatures that have been living on land for hundreds of millions of years.
and now T Rexes are flying around over our head.
No, birds fly over our head. T
Okay, but
Rexes are extinct.
that's part of like the evolutionary thing, right? If we came from the ocean.
Birds are the descendants of dinosaurs. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to track here. That's all.
Okay.
It
So
looks like we're at a
you're
Mexican.
good with evolution then?
No, I'm not good with fucking evolution.
Oh, why is that?
Well, because I believe in something different that a lot of people here are taught to turn their backs on, and that's probably why the world is turned into shit right now. But it's okay. You guys have a right to your opinion.
This is, apart from the pandemic, this is one of the best, like, how do I say this? The trend in human well-being has gone inexorably up for the last several hundred years. Sometimes there are dips like the Spanish flu or or stuff like that. But I mean, would like what was the last year you think humans had a good year? Like pre-scientific revolution?
I say since we went from horse to buggy to actually driving cars, and then probably about what was it, 30 years ago, whenever the internet was invented.
You're
All
on
the
the internet.
like,
Do you own a car?
yeah, I got several cars, buddy.
You own a car and you are on the internet, so you are contributing to the thing you think has made the world worse. How do you? I don't understand that.
You asked me what
I don't.
evolutions took place, right?
Yeah, but then you kind of mentioned something else, so we're talking about that. So I'm just trying to figure out how does somebody say that the car and the internet has made the world worse, and then does
No, I
both of
that
those
worse.
things?
You said you're asking me when we had a pretty good, like when everything started taking off, right?
Yeah, and you
When things
said before
were really good.
those things.
Sorry if I worded it wrong. So before those things, I remember actually going outside, not the cars, but the internet and technology, basically in your hand, cell phone, where everybody sits on their ass and stares at a screen like I'm doing right now with you and having a debate. We
Hmm.
actually used to go outside, play, come home and the lights come on, stuff like that. Um, in my lifetime, that was probably the best time of my life, actually going outside and doing things. But
Sure, but
before
what
that,
you were talking about, you made it kind of seem like the world has gone to hell. So like we're not talking about like
as
just you and
like the
me,
world's
you
kind of
know.
gone to hell recently. This is. I mean, shit. We can go down a rabbit hole on this, um, but I don't. I really don't feel like getting into that because it involves politics and a lot of outside influences as well too, trying to bring down the world into what they want it to be today. Which I think we're heading into something pretty scary. But again, I don't want to jump down a rabbit hole. But yeah, life was pretty
Okay, we don't
good.
have to do that.
Yeah, thanks. Life was pretty good for me in that time. As far as people goes, I don't know because I wasn't around then, so I don't know what they suffered. Because a lot of times you can't really reflect on what was said, and then history books too. It all goes by narration, who writes it, because obviously today everybody's interpretation of what is and what is not is pretty diluted. So over the course of me growing into the person I am today, I just don't know what the fuck to believe, to be honest with you.
Okay. Um, well, okay, if you don't want to like go down, like I could think of some things to say, but you said you didn't like want to go down that hole.
No,
So
if
like we can, do you
you
want to
want
talk
to,
about evolution again?
whatever you want, bud.
Well,
Because
I mean, you're the
honestly,
guest,
like I
so
have
it's
an open
kind of
mind, okay? Because obviously, if we are, if I believe in one thing, it's because of my upbringing. It's because of the outside influences, inside influences, everything to make me who I am, and basically give me the perspective that I have, right? So whenever I ask questions, sometimes it might come off a little crass or sarcastic, but honestly, I'm like, okay, well, if there's another side, let me hear it, and if it makes sense, then I'll consider it. So go ahead and make it make sense to me.
evolution.
Yeah, this is your topic.
Sure. Um,
Based on
so,
skull
ooh,
DNA and all this other cool stuff.
well, so like the basic premises, like when Darwin wrote the book, I mean, he wasn't the first person to imagine that evolution happens. Plenty of people had imagined that. He just, as far as we can tell, that was cool. As far as we can tell, he got the mechanism for how it happens correct. So what he noticed is organisms produce way more offspring than can possibly survive. It's different for different organisms. Like an ant or a termite will have like 20,000 offspring in a day or something like that, because the vast majority of them will die. Mammals and birds take a little bit better care of their young, so they don't have such crazy numbers of offspring, but they devote, sorry, an enormous number or amount of energy and resources to taking care of them. So there's a trade off there. So he noticed that for one thing. Um, he noticed that as organisms reproduce, there's variability within the population. And the reason that organisms produce so many more organisms than can survive to sexual maturity is because amongst all that variation, not every single organism has good, what he called fitness. And this is kind of what survival of the fittest means. Not all of them are all that well suited to their environment. Only the ones that have like the best genetic combination, the best luck, the best, whatever, are
Yeah,
going to
the
live to survive
survival.
long enough and reproduce. But because they only represent part of the gene pool, then what that means is you should expect to see the population genetically change somewhat over time,
Mhm.
sometimes dramatically.
In a long time.
Like if there's a natural disaster or something, you would probably expect to see more dramatic changes. Other times we get what's called stabilizing selection, where, elephants are big. How come elephants aren't 100 feet tall? Well, because it's no good to be 100 feet tall because that puts enormous stress and strain on your body and you need more calories and it's just not really worth it, right? So
Hmm.
over time, we know that populations change. Antibiotic resistant bacteria, the way new viruses mutate, populations of animals in the wild have been studied and seen to have had fairly dramatic changes happen. And the idea is over long enough periods of time, this is sufficient enough to cause entire species to crop up. Not like overnight, not in one generation. It takes an extremely long time, but it appears to, or it was argued to have happened. And then The fossil record bore that out very clearly. Genetics supports that pretty clearly, because when we look at the fossil record, what we see is the organisms that lived millions of years ago, almost exclusively, are completely different organisms than the ones of today. But where do we come from? Well, we're all the descendants of our immediate ancestors. So, ergo, the most logical conclusion based on the evidence is the species of today are the descendants of different species from the past. So I know I talked for a super long time, but
No, no.
that's kind
It's
of like the best most that the most, how do I want to say this? The most cohesive but still briefest explanation I can give on it.
no, that's good. Okay, so down my rabbit hole is I'm a God fearing man. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's a little crazy that we're all here perfectly floating around through space, like they tell us, thousands of miles per hour, rotating on this ball, flying around this big star, infinitely, just so perfectly that it can sustain life and give off everything that you just said. That's my thing. Not to get too deep into it or nothing like that, because I'm not going to lie, I've had a couple of beers. I've watched my down to sleep.
Nothing wrong with that.
Not coherent as much as what I'd like to be right now. But that's how I was brought up. And then just going through and basically doing my own little research and whatnot. And then having faith in something, because a lot of everything that we learn, we try to base off of the things that, basically where our focus is, right? If you're focused on learning, like you can have two scientists, literally, I've been places where scientists are throwing chairs across the room at each other, basically studying the same subject, but one
Well, that's
scientist
funny.
differing view from another scientist, but they're studying the same thing. So
Yeah.
it just clicked the little switch in my head, like, okay, well, who's right? Because we're so focused on one thing, but we shut ourselves down to everything else. So that's why I took it upon myself to be, I'm going to be set in my beliefs, but I'm still open to other people's beliefs as well too, because who's to say that I'm right and they're wrong, and vice versa?